So what about black and black crime? Yeah, you already know it's your boy, the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? It's Thursday night. We here, we're chilling. We got the party people in the place. But before we get to the chat, we gotta get to my man, the second half of the EPMD of urban apologetics. One wrecks, the other destroys. Of course, I'm talking about my man, Mr. True ID, Adam Coleman. What's going on, sir?
What's good, y'all, man? What's happening? What's happening, man? Yo, and that intro beat goes hard, man. I might need you to send me that, John. I might need to write a verse to that, Jane, man. I might have to come out of retirement on that, Jane, man. That's tough. That's
Man,
tough.
thank you.
Love
That's
that
my
beat.
man, Manny Vids hooked me up with that. So shout out to him.
Oh, he make beats?
Well, he got it's those royalty license beats.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So he used that and he hooked up the video and all that.
Okay,
So,
dope. I'm gonna share this right here, man. Share it to my page. Make
oh,
sure y'all share it,
absolutely.
man.
Yes. Please do that. Please share the link before we go in. You heard?
Yes,
So we got.
sir.
Let's check out the party people. We got Thomas White in the house. We got the
Tom Weezy.
incomparable Nate 2D2 in the house. We got
B2.
Beatrice Wells in the building. We got Dwayne Brown. We got Shawnee Miller, the bodega lady in the house with Miss Titus 2. You know what I mean? So
Right.
of course we got Dean New in the building. We got Emmanuel Gary. What's popping? You know? So yeah, man. So before we get into it, man, how you been? How you been, sir?
I've been doing good, man. Been doing good. Just been hustling, man. Trying to get out here, give people as much truth as I possibly can. I just did um, Epiphany Fellowship. We had an urban apologetics series that they're doing for the summer. And so I did a couple segments for them. Did one a couple weeks ago on the problem of evil. Did one this past Saturday on just addressing Black atheism and skepticism. So, both of those went real well, man. And so y'all can definitely check that out. I think it got and I'm not trying to hype myself up, but I think it got up the last one was 3,600 views or something like that on Facebook,
Nice.
and it's exciting because I'm gonna tell you why I'm excited, because in some of those chats, I'm not sure if it was this last one or the one before, you'll see people in the chat room saying talking to one another, yo, man, it's good to see you in here. I used to be a Hebrew Israelite and now I'm not. And
Wow.
People sharing testimonies and stuff about how they come out of some of the stuff. And so it was just good work is going on, man. I'm just happy to be a part of it, yo. So, that's what it is, man. Actually, I got the urban apology. I got the Black Atheism one dropping on my channel tomorrow. So for anybody who missed it, it's going to be premiering tomorrow on my channel, man. So
Nice.
Yeah.
We got Carmel Crunk in the building.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Black Hebrew Israelism critique. One of the longest names you're gonna find in the chat. What's up?
Why you get it like that, man?
It's all love. It's all love. That's real long, man. You know what I mean? Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So
he just wants you to know what he's about, or he or she.
No.
He or she.
Facts.
I don't know if it's
Facts.
So you can't see that joint and not know exactly what he's about.
Up front,
you know what I'm saying?
front with it. Up front.
Right.
We got the Black Atheist in the building. What's going on?
Okay.
So yeah. So it's the usual, the usual suspects are in the building.
Okay.
So the reason why we're here today is this was inspired by our last video that we did.
Yeah.
The Candace Owens after school special. and one of the points that we made was, the defense that people use every time we talk about MJ's in the building.
Oh, you already know.
It might nah, bro. It might Jesse Lee Patterson voice. Chill. That is not
MJ.
chill.
Yo, MJ, come on, man. MJ do not be playing with y'all, man.
Man, ruthless. But
he's got daggers for everybody at all times.
Everybody.
Nobody's safe, though. Nobody's safe.
My sis Natasha, what's going on, sis? All right. Yo, tell everybody else to come through, Natasha. Please share this, man. I need everybody in the church to come hear this real quick. So she goes to my church. She's part of mine.
Oh, okay,
People's
cool.
yeah. So one of the things that we brought up during that video was, a lot of times when we bring up these type of issues, what people would like to go into is, well, what about black on black crime?
Right.
And we touched on it a little bit, but I felt like we didn't do enough justice to that. So
Cool.
what I
Cool.
want to do is really just dedicate this time addressing that argument from various perspectives.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and well, yeah. Do you have any opening remarks before we get into the slides and whatnot?
Well, my first remark is going to be, I guess maybe we could do like a bet in the chat to see how long is this live going to be, because you know how we do, bro. You know how we do. Like this joint could be anywhere from 2 to 8 hours. We don't know what's going to happen right now. You know what I'm saying? Like who knows? Anything can happen. So I want to see if anybody in the chat can guess how long.
At some point tonight, you have to say feature versus. But it's such a dope point, though. I mean, yeah,
Oh, feature. That's so
it's such a
fast.
dope point, though. So I can't hate
Right,
you for
right.
that. But anyway,
That's funny.
yeah, we do tend to be, long winded. So
But no, I mean seriously. So I don't really have any. I mean, because most of the stuff that I had to say will come about during the thing. I will say this though, that um, one of the things that's my pet peeve about the black on black crime rejoinder or counterpoint that people raise is that here's the thing. Obviously, I'm an African American. I grew up in the black community. Hip hop has always been a large part of my life. And so, just being around urban centers, I've really lived out the black experience. And so when I look over my life, I see myself as somebody who made it and could have been a statistic. You know what I'm saying? I could have been, I could have not been here right now. You know what I'm saying? I could have easily been somebody who was at the wrong place at the wrong time or involved in the wrong thing and got my life snuffed out early. Especially growing up in the 80s, especially growing up in, the crack era and all those kinds of things. You know what I'm saying? So, at the end of the day, when it comes to the black on black crime issue, for me, this is not like just a counterpoint. It's not just a counterpoint. And one thing that bugs me is that at the end of the day, 99.999999% of the time, when people raise this issue of black on black crime in response to somebody raising concerns about racism, whatever, it's nothing more to them than a counterpoint. You know what I'm saying, by bringing up black on black crime, so serves no other purpose in their life other than to use to counter bludgeon Christians. Hey, CJ Sims, that's my brother-in-law right there. That's what's up. That's what's up.
well, all right, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. What's going on, CJ? That's what's happening. That's what's happening. So yeah, so when people bring up this issue of black on black crime, it's just a counterpoint, like a chess move to counter, claims about racism. To me, that tells me that they're not serious off rip. You know what I'm saying? And so this is not really part of my slides. This is just kind of like my initial thing. Like honestly, at this point, I don't even engage people on the black and black crime thing most of the time, because if you're not serious about it, then I'm not going to take your comments seriously. I'm not going to engage you seriously because I know you're not serious about it. Right. I'm saying, like, when, if you was, what are you doing about black on black crime? What are you doing about black on black crime? You know what I'm saying? What have you done in your community to address the crime in your area? If you haven't done anything about it, then don't step to me with it. Then that's nonsense. That's nonsense. Right. So, I think, we need, if anything, and I'm just putting this out here now because it's not in my notes. If anything, we need to take this thing seriously. This is people's lives, man. It's serious. You know what I'm saying? That's why, follow my track record. Go back and listen to some of my old music. Like some of my toughest stuff was when I was coming at like hip hop artists for glorifying violence in their music. You know what I'm saying? I'm very passionate about this, and I've been this way for a long time. So when these Johnny come latelys, hop in the mix and want to talk about, what about black and black crime? You're not serious about it. So don't step to me with that. Right, I'm not trying to hear that. So,
but let me get to the slides because Nate Tuduchu says, okay. We'll get to the slides in about 90 minutes, folks. Hang tight. He knows us too well. I
just had to get that out of my system, man.
It's good. It's good.
Stuff it just ticks me off, man. It just ticks me off. Yeah.
So, there's, and this is not a shot to all white people, but, when white people are losing in a police brutality argument, they bring out the black on black crime rejoinder, right? But it's not
Right.
white people. It's not just white people, right? Black people have their version of this as well. In fact, in Intellectual Takeout, Stevie Wonder is quoted talking about if Black Lives Matter, then stop all this black on black killing,
Hmm.
right? So, right, and but it's different, right? Because they're saying is well, we would be respected more by other cultures and races if we weren't as detrimental to our own,
Hmm.
right? If we were more respectful, if we were more in line with the right values, then other people wouldn't treat us the way they do now, right? So it's a different take on the black on black issue. Now,
Hmm.
the first thing you need to know about this argument is that it is when it's used as a rejoinder, it is fallacious,
That's
right?
right.
Now, a fallacy is the use of an invalid or otherwise faulty reasoning or wrong moves in the construction of an argument. A fallacious argument may be deceptive by appearing to be better than it really is, right?
Yo, we got some real gangster moves being taken in the chat right now. Thomas White is not to be played with right now with Stevie Wonder.
I know he was faking. Stevie
He's
don't
coming
shoot.
for
He's coming for
he's
Stevie.
he's coming for Stevie,
Oh
bro.
man,
Come
everybody,
on.
hey, it is what it is, man. The legends
Oh
can get it
man.
too, bro.
Anybody can catch it.
So this particular fallacy that we're speaking on is known as whataboutism, also known as whataboutery. It's a variant of the Tukey logical fallacy that attempts to discredit an opponent's position by charging them with hypocrisy without directly refuting or disproving their argument. Whataboutism is particularly associated with Soviet and Russian propaganda, which is very interesting, right? I didn't know that part. I didn't know that that's what it was known for.
I didn't know that either. It's interesting. It's
So
interesting.
when people use it, they're actually being Russian bots, coming to attack America. No, I'm just kidding. But here's the thing, right? So I'm speaking about something, and you completely bring up a different subject.
Yeah.
So that's fallacious. Like it's not a logical thing to do in an argument. Also, it's very disrespectful. And I said
I
this before in
agree.
the other video. It's mad disrespectful. I'm talking about something, a particular topic, and then you straight up say, nope, we're going to talk about this topic instead. I'm like, listen, and I feel like everybody in the chat, we all need to do this. When someone does this to us, we need to stop the conversation and just say, listen, if you don't want to talk about my topic, that's fine. You have every right not to engage, but at least have the respect to say that.
Right.
Be like, what? I
Yeah.
don't really want to talk about that right now. Cool. I gotta respect that. I can't force you to talk about whatever it is that I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
but at least say it. Don't go and hijack my conversation. Like, don't. It's
On some
mad
straight
disrespectful.
nonsense.
You know what I'm saying? It's like it's. As a man, I take umbrage against that. Like, that's not cool.
Well, I mean, so I'm going to add an extra layer to it. And actually, this is another thing that wasn't in my notes. Hey, you saved me a little bit of time because you're dealing with it. I think it's Tokukwe. I heard somebody
Tukukwe?
say that. I heard somebody say that.
Okay. Oh,
Sounds, yeah, something like that. But yeah, so when you think about it, in some instances at least, you could argue that this sort of like what about black on black crime argument, like counter argument, is actually racist. You know what I'm saying? In some regards. Now I'm gonna tell you why. Because first of all, I'm not a criminal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a criminal, right? So whatever's going on black crimes, that's occurring amongst criminals. But if I'm not a criminal, then now the only connection I have left with them with that counter argument is the black part,
right.
right? So is the person saying that I can't say, comment on racism, for example, because I'm black? I mean, because that's all we're left with, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's just silly. I mean, so my thing is, if I'm not a criminal and you don't find me out here endorsing criminality, I don't do so. I don't hype up, modes of entertainment. You know what I'm saying? That hype up, black on black violence or anything like that. So so where are you going with it? The only thing left is to associate me with black on black crime based upon my blackness. I'm saying, but that's obviously
which is
racist.
even more disrespectful. Right.
Exactly. That's my point. That's even more
Right.
disrespectful. So anyway, there you go.
Right. So outside of it being fallacious and not logical, and outside of the disrespect, what's the point they're trying to make? Right. Oh, okay, Thomas White. Thank you, man. It's Coqui, Coqui,
Coquee. Okay.
Coqui. It's funny. In Puerto Rico, we have these little frogs called Coqui, because that's the sound they make at night, Coqui. So,
Oh, okay. All right.
all right, yeah, just
Little history different. Okay.
little
There
history,
you
little
go.
history, little history.
There you go.
So, but outside of it, outside of the fallacious and the disrespect, what's the
Now,
point? They're
wait a
trying?
minute. I just want to say, like, for that frog point, I feel like you got like 50 slides with sources ready
No,
for
no,
that.
no frog, no
Everything
frog
you
slides,
said.
no frog slides. It ain't, no. That's next week. That's next week. So,
What about
but
Coquee?
the
All right.
point, the point here that they try to bring up when they do the "What about black and black crime" is, why aren't you people, blacks, right? Why aren't you people as concerned about the killing of each other as you are about police killing you, right? Meaning that we're not as concerned about that. Like, we don't really care. Well, you know, for that, I have this, right? We have this article by Andrea Watson. Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity will march against city's violence on Saturday, right? The men are calling members of other fraternities and sororities to join them, along with the residents, civic and church leaders, elected officials, and business owners. They want the violence to stop, saying that it's destroying neighborhoods, killing children, and eliminating the future of so many young people. Right? So we got the fraternities out here marching, dealing with black on black crime.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Here, another article about urban violence. Chicago block patrolled by moms goes 2 years without a fatal shooting. A group of Chicago mothers who have been patrolling a 2 block stretch of South Stewart Avenue in the city's Inglewood neighborhood are celebrating 3 summers without a fatal shooting. We're doing better than most neighborhoods in Chicago, and we're definitely doing better than most areas in Inglewood. Tamar Manasseh, a mother of 2 who grew up in the area, told local television news.
Oh, wow.
Black
Hey,
mother, yeah, yeah,
I'm sorry. I'll let you finish that point. I'm sorry. Good.
yeah. So you got black mothers taking it to the streets, making sure that black and black crime doesn't continue where they live. Get out of.
No, I just want to share, give a shout out real quick to my man Tyron Laws and Rashad Armand as well, because I know, I don't know if they're still doing it now, but I know when things are really, well, I guess Chicago was more so in the news for the rampant violence than it is even
Right.
now.
Right.
They was out there with a number of other ministers, pastors, and so forth on Friday, Saturday nights, praying with folks. I'm talking about like in those areas where people are getting killed and that kind of stuff. They was out there getting it. And that's something that never got put on the news, at least not where I'm at. I don't know
Right.
about locally, but that's not
Right.
something that you typically hear. So we actually had preachers and so forth on the streets at the peak times of crime, praying for folks and so on. So,
Wow.
yeah, people taking a stand.
Then we got, well, okay, yeah, this is continuing. Manasseh 38 founded Mothers Against Senseless Killings, Mask, out of a sense of frustration with persistent gun violence in her neighborhood. The last straw came in June 2015 when 3 women were shot, one fatally near the corner of 75th Street and South Stewart Avenue. 3 days later, donning hot pink t-shirts that read "Moms on Patrol" and armed with folding chairs, Manasseh and about a dozen women set up shop on the block. They vowed to serve as a deterrent to shootings. So we got black women, moms, putting their life on the line to stop black on black crime.
Respect, salute.
Got to, right?
Gotta respect it.
There's the Stop the Violence March seeks to continue to help reduce violent crime in Saginaw. Saginaw, a year after his death, the memory of a 9-year-old Devin Elliott and other victims of violence in Saginaw continues to motivate residents to take back their streets. The Reverend Larry D. Camel says, "We're not going to tolerate kids getting killed in our streets any longer," said Camel, co-founder of faith-based anti-violence community organization Parishioners on Patrol. So we just had moms on patrol. Now we got parishioners on patrol, right? And the new Pittsburgh Courier, community walk to stop violence in McKeesport. right? The let me see if I got this right. The Take Action Mun Valley Community Walk was held August 23rd to bring attention to the many shootings that have recently occurred in the Mon Valley and McKeesport areas. Here's another one, Five on Your Side. Groups hold March for Peace in face of crisis of black on black crime in St. Louis area. Right? St. Louis, African Americans are robbing each other. African Americans are killing and disrespecting each other. We cannot ignore this crisis any longer, said James Clark, vice president of the nonprofit group Better Family Life. Right? So let me stop there. So, as you see, black people in black neighborhoods care. We got black moms patrolling. We got parishioners patrolling. We got pastors and preachers. We got advocates. We got community leaders. They're all protesting and advocating against black on black crime. Now,
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of these events don't make it on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox. But just
Yeah.
because it doesn't go on your major news outlet doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Well,
And
and
that's
the
a
thing.
small segment too. That I could have went on. The whole show could have been that. To be
I'm
honest.
sure. I'm sure it could. I know how you get down. So I'm sure there was 80 other slides that you can be over there skipping, trying to get past them. Say all 80 different marches. But no, in all seriousness. So one thing that we have to understand is, well, two things really. A, the media is an industry. Okay, the media is an industry. All right, and so they're going to put things on that they believe people want to see. Right now, there's two different ways I can go with that. Number one, um, if you want to, if I'm a media person, say I'm the editor, I don't know what the right term is. I'll just say program manager, and I've got to make a decision between two different events. I'm either going to put something on that has Black Lives Matter attached to it in association with it, or I'm going to put something on that has mask. And I'm not saying this to belittle their movement. I'm just saying in terms of notoriety, Black Lives Matter has more national notoriety.
Right.
And so I'm going to put my ratings. So I'm going to go with the Black Lives Matter story. Or if it could be anything. You know what I'm saying? Maybe even if the Black Lives Matter story isn't in the picture, if your organization doesn't have like some sort of social cultural traction to the degree that it's going to attract viewers to my show, then I'm going to opt for something that does, no matter what that other thing is. You see what I'm saying? And so the media plays a role in terms of what gets hyped up. So that's number one. Number two, the second layer to that is that for movements that are interested in gaining more traction, then they're going to attach themselves to stories that the media is going to put on the news. Now, think about it. All right. Let's say that you have a situation where somebody's pulled over and the cop says something disrespectful to them, writes them a ticket, and they keep it moving. That's probably not going to be on your evening news. You know what I'm saying? Local black man disrespected by a police officer. You know what I'm saying? That's not going to be on your evening news, right? That's not something that's buzzworthy. Local officer kills black man. That's something that's going to be on your evening news, right? And if that's going to be on your evening news, then a group like Black Lives Matter is going to want to attach themselves to that to advance their overall, agenda for, their overall cause, whatever. So in some ways, these groups are beholden to the media in terms of what sort of things they get involved in and what things they don't. Now here's the problem. Now, I think now I'm going to be balanced with this, and shout out to my man Leroy Hill for pointing this out. One thing I think that is fair is that I think sometimes the conversation from those who are arguing against this gets centered around just the killings. I'm saying as if we're only talking about the killings, and in part I think that's because that's what's most prominent in terms of the case being made, I guess, from our side of the fence. Right. And I think that what we do need to do a better job of articulating the broad range of concerns that we have, because really what's happening is we're not just dealing with the killings. Obviously, that's just the most heinous, most news grabbing incidents, that we're contending against. You know what I'm saying, but really it's a root system of abuses that goes on with police officers and with citizens. You know what I'm saying, and the lack of justice in these cases that brings about all the angst, and it just gets channeled into these headline cases, because obviously murder is, that's a high order offense. It's gonna engender that kind of news. So I do think we need to do a better job of articulating the range of concerns that we have. When we say Black Lives Matter, we don't just mean, it sucks when a black man gets killed. Obviously that's the worst of it. but really quality of life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's really what we're dealing with. I think we do need to do a better job of making that clear, just to be fair.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
So now we went through the fallaciousness of the argument, and now we've also shown how it's just a downright lie that we do care, we do march, we do protest, we do advocate against black on black crime. I just showed you a small sample size of that. So what we're going to do now is look at another aspect of the argument, which is,
Well, I did have some more on the fallaciousness of it. Do you want to
oh, let's by all means
share that?
let's
Okay,
go,
yes. Let me go ahead and share
please.
my screen here. Yeah, excuse me. I got something going on my eyes, so I'm scratching my eye here. I'm struggling. Um, okay. Boom. Let me.
All right, I see it.
Okay. All right. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so some of it I'm gonna skip over because you've already really addressed it. But really, when it comes down to it is black on black crime. Generally speaking, what I see is that people raise it in one or two ways. They're saying that either the problem of black on black crime is more of a concern rather than say racism, police misconduct, police brutality, or so forth, or B, they're saying that the person concerned about racism is being hypocritical. So you kind of address that second part with the Tokukui, objection and dealing with that. You know what I'm saying? But I want to go back to that first point and kind of deal, because actually there's another shade of fallacy that I want to deal with. Now, in either case, another way we can look at it would be to say that in either case, you're dealing with a red herring. You're saying you're dealing with a red herring fallacy. And so the tokukui is a form, or it can be a form of red herring fallacy, or it could be ad hominem as well. If you're saying somebody's
A
hypocritical
deflection.
or a deflection, right? So when we're talking about a red herring fallacy, it's exactly what it is. This is about diverting attention from the real issue. I'm saying by focusing on something else. Now, I swore that I wasn't going to go here, but and I promise I'm not going to get too far afield. But I do want to make this point real quick, though. You know what I'm saying? I in my heart of hearts, okay, I want to talk about CRT, critical race theory, and
Oh man.
I want to talk about critical race theory.
Dang.
I want to talk about critical race theory or critical theory and Black Lives Matter. As far as in two ways. Number one, critical race theory, I'm not a fan of it in its entirety. There are elements of it that I think are legitimate, cobbled together with elements that are illegitimate. That's why I said in its entirety, I can't rock with it. As far as Black Lives Matter, it's the same thing. Whereas I agree with the sentiment, that true statement that Black Lives Matter. And I think that it's valuable to state that as emphatically and loudly as we can in this current climate, because obviously people that look like me and you are treated as if that's not the case. So we need to state that and make it loud. In terms of the organization, it's clear that when you look into them that their set of principles that they're about and their agenda is not in accord with the biblical worldview. That's obvious. And so as the organization, I can't say that I endorse it wholeheartedly, or I endorse it. I'll just leave it, right. Point blank. Now, with that being said, I see a lot of people that have a lot to say about CRT and Black Lives Matter nowadays. And all I can say is I wish in my heart of hearts, I wish that so many of my friends, family, colleagues, and so forth were as energetic and amped and loud and in opposition against white supremacy and racism as they are against these flawed responses to white supremacy and racism. I'm saying, I think for so many people, I said this on my page the other day, as I was posting an article against CRT, I think so many people are comfortable with addressing CRT, critical race theory, and Black Lives Matter more so than they are comfortable at addressing racism head on. I'm saying they would rather divert their attention to these flawed newcomer movements and ideologies than address racism, which has been in effect for at least 400 years, I'm saying, on this continent. I'm saying, if anything, if you're chopping away at CRT and Black Lives Matter, I'm not saying that we don't need to be critical of them and so forth, but those are like the branches on the tree. What we need to do is get to the root. I'm saying, what is it that produced, the fruit of CRT and Black Lives Matter and all these erroneous ideologies that come packaged with them? What is it that gave rise to these ideologies and groups? That's what we need to focus on. And what irritates me is if somehow you've been oblivious to racism for all this time, you know what I'm saying, and then now your main concern is this laser eye focus on nothing but CRT and Black Lives Matter, then that tells me something about your ability to discern the moral issues of our time. There's something wrong with your moral meter where you're not able to tune into what's really going on and address the full scope of sin, rather than just focus on the sins that you feel comfortable focusing on. So I just had to get that out of my system before I move on.
That was dope. I mean, they're running out of excuses and
Right.
and their own version, like it's like they red herring themselves.
It's true.
Right? They find anything to distract themselves from that particular subject. And thanks to this pandemic, where everything was shut down, including sports, you had no choice but to focus on these things.
It's true.
And now that everyone is focused on it, they have to find something because there's nothing else to distract. So now, all of a sudden, it's cultural Marxism.
Right.
You're
right.
being a socialist. You're a
right.
commie. You're anything. And I hope you get upset with any of those terms so that we don't have to talk about the actual subject matter at hand.
Exactly.
Right.
And you know what the thing is too, and I promise I'm gonna move on. But the thing is, now I'm gonna amend what I just said. Either you guys don't care, or I put it this way: either you're more comfortable talking about those things, or at the end of the day, you don't really believe that racism is a problem in America. You know what I'm saying? Racism is not that big a deal. Therefore, these responses, these flawed responses to racism, like CRT and Black Lives Matter, that's where I'm going to put my attention. And if that's what you believe, then it still hasn't gotten through your skull what the real problem is. And I would recommend to you that you take a step back, you know what I'm saying, learn for a bit, really take a lay of the land and see what's going on, and then address the problems that, that
well,
that are
you're being
before
quite
us.
charitable. It might be they doing it by design. They know what the real problem is, and they don't want to deal with it. Now, I can't read minds, and I don't know if that's the case with everyone, but I'm sure there's a segment of society that knows that we should be dealing with this and purposely look the other way.
Right.
So
somehow America is racism free, and we just now tearing down, Robert E. Lee, like today, like yesterday, literally.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's 2020, and we still debating about Robert E. Lee. You know what I mean? Like, come on, fam. Y'all lost, B. Like, what are we doing right now?
An enemy combatant that was trying to kill Americans.
Right.
He was killing American soldiers.
They weren't trying to kill him. He succeeded. He succeeded in killing Americans.
Right. Came up north to finish us off.
Right.
But that's all. We already talked.
Yeah, we already. All right. So let me go into the fallacy. I can speed this up because we've covered some of it. You know what I'm saying? But y'all know what it is, man. Y'all know how we get in. All right. The fallacy of relative privation. The fallacy of relative privation. See, I got Ed Hockley, I think is his name. You know what I'm saying? And basically, is this when you reject an argument by stating the existence of a more important problem, or at least what you believe to be a more important problem. And it's kind of like he says in the caption: just because there are worse things happening in the world doesn't mean that other problems should be ignored. Right. Now we see this all the time. Obviously, I mean, people say, well, what about black and black crime? What about abortion? What about the price of tea in China, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, people bring up all kinds of things. Now, I will say this: abortion is a problem. I've spoken about it publicly. I've got shows on it. I'm in no way endorse abortion, nor do I endorse people that endorse abortion. You know what I'm saying? I really don't. You know what I'm saying? Nevertheless, just because there are greater problems doesn't mean that the problem that I'm drawing attention to right now isn't something that should be addressed. So if you go to, something like a cancer rally, for breast cancer, and then somebody walks in and says, well, actually esophageal cancer kills way more people than breast cancer.
Right.
I mean, that's stupid. I mean, that's obviously
and
stupid.
What about the kids starving in Africa?
Right.
Huh?
Right.
Like,
right. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's various different problems in the world. There's more than enough brokenness to go around, unfortunately, due to the effects of sin. You know what I'm saying? And if there's a particular problem, so let's say, for example, and if anybody who doubts me on this, I want you to try this out. If you're married, here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell your wife that you're going to wash the dishes. And then I want you to not do it and actually add more dishes I'm saying, and leave it for her to do it.
Listen, don't listen to Adam Coleman.
No, I'm not. I want you to know. If anybody who does, I want you to do it.
As a happily married man, he's trying to break up happy homes now. So.
Right. No, I'm just saying, go for it, please. And matter of fact, I'm gonna do enough. Leave some dirty socks and dirty drawers on the floor in front of the kitchen sink for no good reason. And then when your wife steps to you and says, because like, and asks you what kind of an imbecile you have to be to be exhibiting such behavior, I want you to say to her, "What about black on black crime?" That's what I want you to say. What about abortion? Right? What about all the other? I mean, that's what I want you to do. And I want you to come back, email me at TrueID #7 at gmail and tell me how that worked out.
From your new home because you got kicked out.
right.
Thanks to Adam Coleman.
Right. It's stupid, man. You know what I'm saying? It's stupid. I'm sorry. I can't say it and I don't, I try to be as gracious as possible. When people bring up this black on black crime thing, it's stupid. You know what I'm saying? Stop doing that. You know what I'm saying?
Let's use a Bible word. Let's use a Bible word. Folly.
It's folly. There we go.
Folly.
There we go. and to your point, no, because at some point, you could, in some ways, you could look at it as being possibly a non sequitur, because whether it be the Tokukui angle or the fallacy of relative privation, depending on how they're posing, their counter argument about black and black crime. In either case, let's say if it's the case that I am being hypocritical, let's say that I am a gangster rapper and I'm speaking out against police brutality, right? Even if that's true, then you would be correct that I'm being hypocritical, but it doesn't then follow from that. It doesn't logically follow that police brutality or misconduct more broadly is a problem.
That's a genetic fallacy, right? It's wrong because of where it comes from, right?
Oh, good. That's a good point. That's a good point. So. Right. Good point. And same thing with fallacy of relative privation. Even if it is the case that there are worse problems in the world, it doesn't logically follow that I'm not rightly concerned about the problem that I'm giving voice to. I'm saying that's the fallacy of relative privation to suggest otherwise.
Or another way, a broken clock could be right twice a day.
Right.
So even though you're a hypocrite and you're a gangster rapper, it doesn't mean that you don't say things that are actually correct and real, right?
So, sure.
Right.
Yep. So I got some other points, but it gets into moving past the fallacy part. But we can. Do you want to go somewhere else with it, or?
Yeah. I want to kind of go into. Actually, I'm gonna bring it right back to you.
Okay.
But I need to share my screen.
Gotcha. All right. Take that off here. Boom. All right.
So we talked about the fallaciousness, the disrespect, right? And we talked about that it is being handled. People are black and brown people are dealing with black and black crime. We're advocating against it. We're marching. We're protesting. Things are being done. It's just the major, networks don't pick it up a lot of times. But it definitely happens. What I want to do now is go into when people actually try to unpack the statement, what about black and black crime, they actually do bring up statistics. And a lot of times they bring this particular meme, a meme that our president retweeted as well. And you can see here, blacks killed by whites, 2%, blacks killed by police, 1%. Then you go all the way down to blacks killed by blacks, 97%. And a lot of people, including believers, will post this and say, see, that's why we're saying, what about black and black crime? This is what you should be more concerned about. Stop killing your own people, and then maybe, this, that, and the other. Right? So now, Adam, like in the previous video, he did touch upon the stats, but I really wanted him to really just unpack it and just really go in. So with that being said, sir, I toss it back to you.
Yeah, cool. There's a couple of different directions I'm going to go. I'm going to try not to repeat myself from last time, but, I did want to deal with this. I wanted to touch on this. I didn't really get to it. So now, actually, I do have the study link. Actually, I guess it didn't really help you because you can't click on it. But
pause for a minute.
Okay.
So listen, Mr. Coleman's about to go in. It's going to get super nerdy. We're gonna crunch some numbers.
Well, not too much. Just a few.
But it's going to be real. So please share the link, because we're trying to put this argument to bed. We're trying to equip you guys so that on your timeline, anybody brings this nonsense to you, You have the necessary tools and resources to shut this down once and for all. All right. So, with that being said, sir, you may continue.
All right. Just a couple stats here. Because actually, I think the real problem is kind of beneath the stats, if you will. But number one, and actually, this is going to talk about, get back to some of the fallacies. But so this study right here, or I just kind of just highlight a particular stat, and I got the study link there, and I'll put it in the chat. It's from the FBI and whatnot. But anyway, this deals with from like 1970. Oh, let me make sure I give you the right dates. From 1980 rather through 2008. These numbers were compiled, and what you see here is right. When you come to homicides, you're dealing with black on black homicide is about 94% about, and then you're dealing with white on white homicide is about 84%. So there's really only a 10% difference, right? Now, it's not to say that it's not alarming. I mean, obviously, it's not something that anybody should be proud of. Nobody should be happy that, there's this 94% rate. But the whole point is this: what about white on white crime? What about white on white crime, right? If you're saying that there's something going on within the community that should take more precedence than whatever it is that somebody's saying about that's going outside the community, then anybody who says something about black on black crime, who's a white person, should first turn inward and say, well, what about white on white crime? Before you say anything about black on black crime, you ought to first reflect on white crime, because you're far more likely to be killed by a white person than you are a black person, right? You're far, whatever's going on with black on black crime or police brutality or whatever, what's going on in your community is more of a risk to you than what's going on outside the community. So if you're going to apply the same lens, then you'd have to argue that you need to be, posing the same question to yourself. But we can take it even further. Talking about, Donald Trump a second ago, right? His platform, I'm saying he ran on, at least, among other things, he wanted to build a wall, right?
Right.
He wanted to spend billions and however many millions
and
of
have
dollars.
Mexico pay for it.
Right. You see how that worked out. He's saying this man shut down the government, right? This guy was talking, he's talking about government shutdown rather for to build this wall. Why? Because now some of the main points is they didn't want crime coming in from Mexico. He didn't want the rapists and drug dealers and so forth that he talked about. Didn't want them, and they also didn't want terrorists having free access to America coming from South America. Now I'll go on record and say, look, every nation has a right to protect its borders in whatever way they see fit. That's not my concern. Here's the issue: is that he was able to sell that to his whole base of supporters. Okay. Now, here's the thing. You're far more likely as a white person to be killed by another white person than you are a terrorist. You're far more likely to be killed by another white person than you are some, Mexican, basically, evildoer that's come across the border, right? You're far more likely to be killed by a white person than you are anybody like that. Yet, you have these supporters who are willing to put a guy in office who will spend billions of dollars to put up a wall. It might be trillions, I don't know. But, however many billions of trillions of dollars to put up this wall, what I'm saying, to prevent those things, I'm saying that you're obviously statistically not as likely to fall victim to. Why? Because even though you're far less likely to fall victim to a, Mexican, evildoer or terrorist, people still believe that there's some level of threat that they ought to guard themselves against.
Fear mongering.
Right. So here's the thing. Likewise, it is true that I am not likely, I as an individual will not likely be killed by a police officer. But that doesn't mean that therefore there's no threat to the extent to which I believe that inaction is appropriate. You see what I'm saying? So in the same way that you're willing to spend billions of dollars, I'm willing to raise my voice and say we need police reform. And if you're rational for building the wall, then you have to grant that I'm rational for, raising my voice about justice, being done in every possible case, in this nation. You see what I'm saying? So my question is, next time somebody says something about terrorism, about whatever ism they want, about the building a wall or whatever, then my question is going to be, well, what about white on white crime? What about white on white crime? If that's how we want to carry it. Now, obviously, that's going to be a dead end conversation. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because it's irrational. It's irrational. people have reasons for concern for, for various different things on various different levels. But if you're going to put that out there, then you have to be prepared for the response. You know what I'm saying? The other side is this, another thing I want to break down just from this one stat. There's a lot of things we can deduce from it. Now, so I'm debating whether I want to go here or not. So anyway, the other day, your boy James White made a claim that how are black people a people, quote unquote, when among everybody they're killing each other the most? You know what I'm saying? Okay. Well, white people are killing themselves more than anybody else. You know what I'm saying? Or comparatively. Now, yeah, we do have a higher rate, so I get where he's coming from. So watch where I'm going. So number one, I can say to him, wait, that's something that's going on outside of your community. What about white on white crime? You know what I'm saying? Or we could just shift to a different playing field. So what about, guess what? There's more Americans that kill other Americans than non-Americans kill Americans, right? So are Americans a people? Are Americans a nation? Because we kill more of each other than anybody else kills us, right? You see how all this kind of stuff, once you take the first wrong step, logically speaking, you open yourself up for a plethora of different counter arguments to expose how illogical you are.
So what you're saying is the biggest threat to white people is white people.
Well, is that what I'm saying? That's what the stats say. You know what I'm saying? That's according to the statistics. According to the statistics, right? Now,
so it's not Malik. It's not Malik. It's Brad that's going to get you.
Right.
Right. That's what you're basically saying.
It's Brad. No, but it's true. I mean, that's the thing. So if the two-quid fallacy, works for me, then it works for them too, right? I mean, if I should not be concerned about things that are going on or harm coming from other communities or ill things going on in other communities more so than my own, then they shouldn't either.
Hey,
right?
And where's the protests on white crime? Where's the advocacy? I don't hear anything about that,
bro. I'm telling you now. I could be wrong. I'm just talking off the cuff.
Right.
I ain't never seen a protest against white on white crime. We know there's protests against black on black crime. We know that people are talking about that. People talk about music in the news, celebrities, protests, so forth. I ain't never seen a White Lives Matter march against white on white crime. I haven't seen it. You know what I'm saying? So that's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that. You know what I'm saying? The other side of it is too. Now I'm not going to get into this because I addressed it last time. But actually I am. So I actually am. And it's like
you lie to yourself all the time. You know that?
I know it. But I promised myself that I wasn't gonna like be too long-winded this time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna hit on some points, and then I'm gonna provide articles for people to go do the research on their own. And we can put that in the chat. So cool. I figured that would be. I want to be a better steward over your channel rather than just come here and monopolize. I'm trying to do better. So what I want to do is shift gears a little bit and just talk about just the complexity of crime itself. Not just black on black crime, but just the complexity of crime. Because one thing I will say is, like, last time we were doing the critique of Candace Owens, and she brings up the black on black crime thing. And, I think that there's a couple of different things going on there. But the bottom line is, I think that when you show stats of well, this is how many crimes are being committed by black people. This is how many, violent offenses are being committed by black people versus white people or whatever. Then the only question you're answering is who's committing, a particular amount of crimes. You haven't gotten into why, this particular group or that group is committing crimes. You've only told us who's doing it. Now, if that's the case, then, I think I feel like that's really mishandling the problem of black on black crime, because it's much more serious than just jockeying for position on which people group is in a more moral position to make a critique than others, which is really what's going on there. You know what I'm saying? Or trying to turn it into a Democrat versus Republican kind of thing. Right. Okay, so when you just talk about, this is what black people are doing and versus white people, I think that's just really surface level. And I would encourage people, you know what I'm saying, to actually, as I move to the next slide, I would encourage people to read some articles on criminology. Like I said, I'll put some in the chat. I mean, in the description here, or BK Podges will rather. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not gonna lie to you. Like when I started preparing for this last week, my intent was to kind of just work my way through stat by stat. But I in a way, I kind of was humbled. I was like, you know what? Actually, this issue of crime is far more intricate than even I realized. And I went to school. My undergrad was in criminal justice, you know what I'm saying? But it's been a long time since I've kind of had my my attention on that sort of a thing. But when you get into the complexities of crime, there's so many different layers as opposed to just, well, black people are doing this and white people are doing that. So now this crime, this list here is from the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. I pulled this list of causes of crime, factors in crime, and I'm going to put the link to this as well in the description so y'all can see it for yourself. But they deal with the area of criminology, the study of crime. And basically, if you look in the body of literature that's been written on it, you'll find all of these different sorts of factors that contribute to the rate of crime in any given area or among a people group or what have you. So I'm just going to kind of just hit across some of them. But population density and degree of urbanization, that's a factor. Variations in terms of the composition of population. So when you think about, what's the ratio between young people and those who are or elderly or middle-aged and so forth. The stability of a population with respect to residents' mobility. How do you live in an area that's transient, or are there basically the people in that neighborhood tend to stay there? You know what I'm saying? There's all sorts of things, right? I'm reading these for a reason, so stay with me. Okay, modes of transportation and highway system. I'm gonna come back to that. You know what I'm saying? Economic conditions, including median income, poverty level, and job availability. Now, at the bottom here, I put these two in red. All right, cultural factors and educational, recreational, and religious characteristics, as well as family conditions with respect to divorce and family cohesiveness. Now, here's why I bring this up. When people talk about black on black crime, the conservatives that I run into, 99.999% of the time, they want to talk about fatherlessness. They want to talk about, black people making bad decisions with their money and creating, desperate situations. They want to talk about culture. They want to talk about black culture, maybe in terms of the esteeming of criminality and so forth. Now, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to take the opposite extreme where we say, well, none of those problems exist. I'm saying you can turn on BET right now and see that, there's that in the black community, we have an inappropriate relationship with criminality. I'm saying, like, we esteem it too much. Now, with that being said, some of that has to do, again, with media, because the media has realized that, if we weaponize criminality in the form of music against this particular population, they'll eat it up, they'll buy it and all that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, white people will buy it too. So at the expense of this black community, we're going to exemplify the worst of them. We're not going to sell people like Lupe Fiasco, or I'm just talking about secular artists, or somebody who's speaking against crime and all that kind of stuff. We're going to sell the worst people. You know what I'm saying? We're going to talk, matter of fact, of all the different rap groups that they could have come out with, I'm saying for a movie, we're not going to give you Public Enemy. We're going to give you NWA. That's what we're going to do. You know what I'm saying? People get mad at me all they want for that if they want to. I'm saying, but we have to think about these kind of things. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to, I'm going to just leave that as it is.
We're not going to get the De La Soul story.
We don't care about De La Soul. We don't care nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? If they about, peace and consciousness, we're not about that. I'm just talking about secular artists. No, we're going to give you NWA. I'm saying we're going to give, I'm not going to say it on your channel, but N-words with an attitude. You know what I'm saying? I'm salty about that. But because I think that we eat stuff up that we ought not to. I think that Hollywood does us a great disservice, and we need to stop doing that. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so we're not going to say that these problems don't exist, but I just want you to take note of how many other factors there are. And this actually isn't even a whole list. How many other factors there are in contributing to crime beyond just culture and family cohesiveness, beyond just fatherlessness in the home. Okay, and I'm going here for a reason. I'm just going to leave that there. All right, you have all these different factors, two of which thus far have to do with what's inside the community, or maybe decisions people they make and so forth. All right, let me go a little bit further here. Okay, climate, believe it or not, the effective strength of law enforcement agencies. You know what I'm saying? Now, mind you, well, actually, I'll come back to that in a second. Administrative and investigative emphases of law enforcement. These things are impact the crime rate. Alcohol outlet density. I want to stop for a second and talk about that.
Wow.
Alcohol outlet density. Now, actually, this wasn't on the FBI site. I added this one because it's you find it in the literature. And again, everything I'm saying, we're gonna put in the description. You'll see these articles supporting my claims here. But with alcohol outlet density. Now, this is very fascinating. They found that there are studies that found that the number of liquor stores and bars in an area that creates access to alcohol is a predictor of crime and violent crime in the area in which they're in. The degree to which you have liberal access to alcohol contributes is actually a predictor of crime. This is and it's not and actually the studies that I saw, it's not, you have like what's called weak predictors and strong predictors. I'm saying it was actually a strong predictor. You know what I'm saying? Now here's why I bring this up. All right, in the study that I put in the chat, what they talked about is if you have areas that are already subject, to high levels of crime, then what you're going to find is stores that are of I guess a positive repute, like basically kind of stores like just I don't know, like I don't know,
A bookstore.
bookstores. J.C. Penney's. I don't know if they have J.C. Penney's up your way.
Yeah, they do.
Macy's. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to find Macy's in the hood. You know what I'm saying? Stores like that are not going to put their products in areas where there's high crime. And so it leaves a vacuum for other businesses to move in. And the other businesses that move in tend to be those like liquor stores and corner stores that make a large amount of their money from selling liquor.
But behind the counter, though, like in the bodegas, I don't know if they do that in VA, but in New York, they sell what we call them nutcrackers. And they're fruity alcoholic drinks in styrofoam cups. But that's behind the counter. You got to ask for that. That's not on the shelves.
Yeah, we got like different terms, like gut busters. I've heard that term. You know what I'm saying? Things like, but I feel you though. They serve the extra stuff. You know what I'm saying? The stuff that got extra kick behind the counter, as well as sometimes, man, shoot, there's a joint right down the street from me that got busted for selling illegal guns in the hood. You know what I'm saying? All kind of stuff. But I'm just talking about the alcohol though, right? But anyway, my point is there's a positive correlation, right? And by positive, I mean that one indicates the existence of another, right? Or has a causal relationship. There's a positive correlation between the presence and the liberal access to alcohol in the area, to crime and even violent crime in that area. I'm saying, now here's why I bring this up. The individuals in that locality don't have control over whether or not they put a liquor store there. You know what I'm saying? Whether they don't have control over that. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee you, if you want to open up a business anywhere in America, I guarantee you're going to have to go to that locality and you're going to have to see if the kind of business that you want to open up fits within the zoning policy prescriptions for the area that you want to open up that business. You got to go to the zoning office. You know what I'm saying? There's certain businesses cannot, or churches, or maybe some sort of organization, community centers, whatever it is you want to open up. There's zoning laws and zoning policies in your locality that dictate what kind of place you could open up in any given area. So a locality could easily say that they're going to zone hood type areas. I'm saying for either they can certainly restrict the amount of alcoholic beverage selling entities that are in any given area.
And what's funny too? In New York, at least, when the pandemic hit and we finally sheltered in place, only essential workers were allowed to work, right? Essential companies. One of those essential companies was the liquor stores. Liquor stores were considered essential during a pandemic. So I just want to put it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very telling. I'm saying now I'm going to move quickly, but I'm just giving you an example, and I'm partly highlighting this because I just really hadn't thought about it. You know what I'm saying? But when you look in the hood, you always see the liquor stores.
It's true.
If you don't see nothing else, you're going to see the liquor store. In some close proximity, it's going to be the hair store, and there's going to be that gas station that sells hair products, T-shirts. You know what I'm saying? Soap, everything, and everything. Maybe they might even sell gas. I'm saying the gas pump might not even be working, but they're gonna sell everything else. I'm saying black and milds or whatever. I'm saying we all know that, right? I'm saying, but so you have to ask yourself the question: why are these liquor stores so accessible? You know what I'm saying? In these places where you see a positive correlation between that and crime. All right, so moving on, policies of other components of criminal justice system. So at the policy level, you know what I'm saying, things can impact crime. I give you a perfect example. I'm saying here in Virginia, this is pretty fascinating. So I used to teach. I used to have this position where I would work with youth who have been convicted, or actually, were actually coming up on trial for a particular crime, and they, either had some sort of mental deficiency or whatever, to where it was uncertain as to whether or not they could, really go through the trial and have like a legitimate defense. I'm saying, or were they mentally incompetent to stand trial? So my job was to go in and teach kids the legal system. You know what I'm saying? Lick your hair in church. There you go. That sounds like the name of a rap album or something. Right? Yeah. Licking hair in church. Licking hair in church. Hey. That's terrible. But seriously, I mean, so Anyway, long story short, my job was to teach kids the legal system and kind of how to go through a trial. And at the end of it, if they couldn't test, to the point where they could demonstrate that they were mentally capable, then they wouldn't go to trial. They would be, just ruled incompetent. Now, we were in a training one time, and the dude was breaking down how felonies are treated versus how misdemeanors are treated. And we're sitting there on this teleconference, and he's like just reading through the different offenses that one could get a felony for. And he's making the point that in Virginia, at least at the time, this is about 6-7 years ago, if you were, say, 13 and were convicted of a felony, you know what I'm saying, then from or I guess convicted of an adult crime, something that required you to be tried as an adult, then any crime after that, you know what I'm saying, no matter how old you were, even if you were still considered to be chronologically a youth, you would be still tried as an adult. So once you got tried as an adult once, everything after that you tried as an adult. That's how it was in Virginia. It might still be that way. I'm not really sure. And what's crazy is some of the offenses were like, not even like violent offenses, but had to do with like distribution of drugs and so on and so forth. And this file, so it's wild because you got this white guy, he's sitting there talking to you. He's like, man, you know what? It's strange. Actually, when you think about it, these crimes, even these nonviolent ones, are most likely to be committed by African Americans. And once they're tried as an adult, they're going to be tried as an adult for everything after that. So it's almost kicking them, this one population, into the being tried as an adult like 4 or 5 years earlier than any other population. That's strange. That's what this is what the dude said. He's like, man, that's kind of unfair when you think about it. I was like, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
You think?
But these are policies and laws that were on the books. That's how the laws were structured. You see what I'm saying? Now, nobody at the street level has anything to do with that. You know what I'm saying? Other than, at least immediately, you can vote people in to change those laws or whatever. But these laws are in operation. And so now, that's going to impact criminality. It's going to impact incarceration rates and so on and so forth in any given area. So that's just an example. So last two here, citizens' attitudes toward crime. That might be something that, maybe it's within the community. Or crime reporting practices of the citizenry. So, people see crimes, but they're not reporting it for whatever. Yeah, don't snitch. Right. So that might be something that's cultural or something that was in the community. But I just wanted to highlight now, again, other than the alcohol outlet density that I pointed out, all the rest of these were on the FBI website as causal factors for crime. And you can go back to the last joint that we did. I'm not going to go through it now, but I talked about the Gini coefficient, where it deals with not just poverty, but also the kind of basically poverty in relation to your neighbor who has way more than you. That's a particular kind of fuel for crime, if you will. You know what I'm saying? That's captured by what's called the Gini coefficient. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so he said 1 hour in the books. I was trying to hustle through. You know what I'm saying? I'm through most of it because I didn't want to belabor it. But again, for everything I'm saying, I promise you, please, I urge you, please, it's fascinating. Go check it out. Really start reading up on criminology. The reason why I brought all this up is because, well, the first thing is this issue of black on black crime is way more complex than just pointing out that 94% of black people, you know what I'm saying, or 94% of homicides among black people occur at the hands of another black person. There's all these other factors that come into play, most of which don't necessarily have to do with what's internal in the community. I'm gonna hop on that in just a second, but I just want you to understand how complex this issue is. Okay, so when somebody brings up this issue of black on black crime, I really want you to press them and say, well, what have you read up on? You know what I'm saying in this regard? Are you're just telling me who is doing X amount of crime? My question to you is, what do you know about the causes of crime? Can you talk to me about what sort of causes might contribute to there being a high degree of crime in the area? We'll talk about poverty in a second. You know what I'm saying? I haven't even gotten on that yet, but I mean, poverty certainly could be up. We'll get to that in a minute. Actually, I think it's on the previous slide. You know what I'm saying? But my point is, I don't know if you want to keep going or do you want to say something, or I can go to my next slide.
Let's go.
Okay, cool. So we talked about the fallaciousness of it. And so I guess if I could frame this argument that I'm making here is that just the surface levelness of the what about black and black crime rejoinder. You know what I'm saying? You're just throwing it out there and you hit me with a stat, but you're not telling me anything about what's really going on with black and black crime. You're just telling me that a particular group is exhibiting certain levels of crime. But if you want to have a deeper discussion, then we can get to that. You know what I'm saying? So for my next slide here, I want to talk about what I believe is going on. Okay. All right. Now, when people talk about black and black crime, I think what we have is let me clarify. Basically, it's a blame game. You see that thing at the bottom. It's kind of it's the hot potato. That's my blame hot potato. You know what I'm saying? And I think what's happening here is that you have people outside the community playing a blame game with people inside the community, and vice versa, right? So let me break that down a little bit. So there are some causes of crime that might be internal to the community. These might be things like just people, individuals who are just doing bad in the system. Bad decision making is on the part of individuals, or more broadly, or some people might even say, now I don't believe this is the case, but some people might say that there's just these innate flaws, with black people. Obviously that's clearly racist. I mean, if you look in the literature of criminology, there's no indicator that that race in and of itself is some sort of biological, outworking from. Excuse me, that crime in and of is not like a biological outworking of race or something like that. That's obviously racist is not supported, biologically. Biologically speaking, really race doesn't even exist. But that's another thing. So anyway, but you could have these internal factors. Now, again, I want to say this. Look, what we don't want to do, if we want to be intellectually honest, I'm saying, I will say this: you can't act as if these things aren't a problem. I'm saying all cultures have problems. I'm saying all families have problems. All individuals, sin is pervasive. You know what I'm saying? So we can't act like there's no problems within the community, because then I think if you're being disingenuous in that way, then you can't expect other people to treat the matter correctly as well. Okay, but then my whole point is you also have people within the community. So anyway, so people outside the community want to emphasize the problems going on in the community. I think that there are times when people in the community, or at least either are or are accused of, wanting to put all the focus on things outside the community, like racism, systemic oppression, governmental shortcomings, and so forth. Now, obviously, those things are a problem too. But I think that people who are outside the community, they don't want to take the hot potato. You know what I'm saying? If they can keep the problems within the community, then they can keep the issue of crime and so on and all these problems that we're talking about at arm's length. You know what I'm saying, hey, okay, well, I don't have to deal with racism. I don't have to deal with the problem of systemic oppression. I don't have to deal with problems with the government in our society, because Candace Owens says this is really y'all black N-words. It's the problem. Is y'all are killing each other, so I can feel safe and sleep at night because it's not my problem. It's y'all over there. As long as it's y'all over there, I don't have to deal with it. As long as it's problems internal to the community, I don't have to look in the mirror and say something that maybe I should do something. I think most people are just who raise these. Well, many people who raise these arguments are just too morally lazy to look in the mirror and ask themselves, are they part of the problem? And even if not, what can they do to resolve the problem? You know what I'm saying? So you have this hot potato where people in the community are trying to toss it outward, the blame outward, and people outside the community are trying to toss it inward. And here's what I think is the problem. Now we're going to bring it around to scripture. At the end of the day, the problem is unregenerated people. You know what I'm saying? Just this world. Put it this way: we have an accountability problem. An accountability problem. I'm saying, in the world, you can't expect for people to rightly face up to their moral shortcomings because they're in the world. I mean, so really, my conversation is at this point, I'm shifting away from that. I'm now dealing with the church. You know what I'm saying, what we need to do is get back to a biblical view of what does moral accountability look like. Now, here's where I'm going with you. All right. The problem, now I've really been thinking about this. A huge part of the problem is we don't understand what the Bible has to say about sin and moral accountability, because here in the Western world, in America, we are inheritance of the Enlightenment period. Okay. And the Enlightenment period, you know what I'm saying, and by the Enlightenment period, it's an era of philosophy, if you will, or just social change that sprung up in Europe for the most part, all that kind of stuff. At the end of it, but there was a heavy emphasis on individualism, and heavy emphasis on individualism. And so we take that individual, it's like we breathe it in just like air, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we just assume that our individualistic mentality is the way that the world is. When if you look in scripture, actually, what we do is we kind of read about the passage of sin. We think about sin individualistically, but really there's levels of accountability with respect to sin throughout the scriptures. Okay. So, you can't just, say on an individual level, or even just on the level of a subgroup, or just on the level of the family. That's not where the buck stops as far as moral accountability. I'm going to give you some examples real quick.
Right. I mean, we talked about that when we talked about justice and how justice is a communal enterprise. You know what I mean? It's not just you can't go and be a vigilante and seek justice. You have to seek justice within the community. We see
Right.
that's replete throughout Scripture. So
Yeah, exactly. Now, again, I'm not going to go into all the stats right now, but poverty. I would encourage people to check this out too. Poverty is certainly positively correlated with levels of crime. You know what I'm saying? That's just that's like fundamental in criminology. You see it all over the place. I'm saying there is this relationship between poverty and crime. Now, what does the Bible have to say about poverty? I might actually end up doing a whole show on this, but I'm trying to speed it up because we're already at 1 hour and 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? I promise not to be long winded. Now I want to read this passage right quick. Now this is Deuteronomy, chapter 15, okay, verse 7 through 11. Actually, I think I'm going to say a little bit more about this. So it says Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 7 through 11. All right, now mind you, I'm reading this because I want to show the disconnect between how we understand moral accountability and what we see borne out in the scriptures. Okay, now in this chapter, in this verse, it says, "If anyone is poor among you, your fellow Israelites, in any of the towns of the land the Lord your God has given you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. Rather be open-handed and freely lend them whatever they need. Be careful not to harbor this wicked thought. Quote, the seventh year, the year of canceling debts is near. So, quote, end quote, so that you do not show ill will towards the needy among your fellow Israelites and give them nothing. They may then appeal to the Lord against you, and you will be found guilty of sin. Give generously to them, and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to do." Okay, there will always be poor people in the land. So when Jesus said, the poor you should have with you always, he wasn't just randomly saying it. It's from the scriptures. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed towards your fellow Israelites who are poor and needy in your land. Now, I want y'all to think about something. All right. When you think about the American understanding of poverty, okay, in terms of responsibility for the poor, usually what you think is this notion of you gotta pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. I'm saying poverty is your problem. You're saying you made bad decisions. You did this, you did that. Basically, poverty is a fault of the individual or maybe perhaps the culture, so on and so forth. Biblically speaking, who was God talking to? I'm saying now I'm going to say this. Let me back up for a second. I'm taking my cues from Scripture in terms of God's heart toward the poor. Okay, all right, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Okay, who was God talking to in this passage? He wasn't talking to just a couple individuals. Okay, Deuteronomy and the giving of the law, right? It's the second telling of the law. It's basically as God is making a covenant with the community of Israel, he's giving them his expectations for how they ought to be, right? And so it was supposed to be a community-wide sentiment. It was a community-wide commandment that your disposition toward the poor is supposed to be one of open-handedness and giving. It was supposed to be a collective character trait that we are collectively giving towards the poor that are among us. Why? Because here in America, again, we understand poverty, generally speaking, to be the problem of a person. Whereas biblically speaking, poverty is as a result of the fall of man. Poverty goes beyond just the individual. It goes beyond just government policies. It goes beyond just, some particular subculture that has some particular malady. No, actually, poverty is a result of the fall of man. You know what I'm saying? And so we have this individualistic understanding of poverty and the crime that comes from it. You know what I'm saying? That flows from it. We have this individualistic understanding. But what I'm saying is our problem is we need to, attend to people. I'm saying attend to these issues from a biblical perspective.
And that flies in the face of the claim that the USA is this Judeo-Christian nation.
Right.
Right. And it's like, well, if we are making that claim, then that means that the Bible is the standard by which we live by. And of course, because of the current state of affairs, that's definitely not the case.
Right. And at the end of the day, just to kind of sew up this point, what I'm really trying to get at is there's strong indication in the literature that crime is more so of a symptom of a deeper problem of poverty and social disadvantage. And if that is the case, and God's heart is toward the poor and towards the vulnerable in society, then our disposition towards those who are involved in crime and victims of crime should not be a dismissive stiff arm to try to pass the buck and say, no, it's your problem. No, our heart should be one of compassion towards people to say, you know what, if there is this issue of black on black crime, if that's an issue and I can demonstrate that it is at least in part due to some broader societal problem that yields poverty and maybe some other things, then the right thing for me to do as a Christian is to get my hands dirty and live out the justice that the Bible calls me to, and ask myself, how can I be a neighbor to that 94% of homicide victims, you know what I'm saying, that's going on in black on black community?
Bro, that's
how can I be a neighbor?
But that's socialism, though.
Right. Right. Well, see, that's the another side stuff that people make, is all these different labels and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just talking scripture. Now, let me just give this last slide. Again, now, mind you, let me be very clear. Okay, collective responsibility does not negate individual responsibility, right, and individual responsibility does not negate collective responsibility. Okay, so let me just give you this quick example real quick. All right, so let's say, we talk a lot about redlining. Okay, now redlining is, for anybody who doesn't know, it was this practice among banks and lending institutions to basically take the black community in terms of equity and property value. That's basically essentially what happened. Okay, so let's say that you owned a home, and and if not tampered with, due to redlining, you would have earned $40,000 in equity on that home. Okay, but due to redlining practices over a period of time, you only received $10,000. Okay, you've been defrauded of $30,000. Now, let's say you're stressed out and you just squandered that $10,000, and you act immorally and you leave your wife and kids because you're all stressed and all this kind of stuff. Now, listen, leaving your kids, leaving your wife, squandering that $10,000, that's on you. Those are decisions that you made, and you're held accountable for that. That's individual accountability, okay, responsibility. But even taking that into account, the system that defrauded you of $30,000 is still responsible for their end of the bargain, for their end of the wrongdoing that went on. You know what I'm saying? So you taking individual responsibility doesn't negate that you were still robbed of $30,000, and being robbed of $30,000 still doesn't excuse you for then going further and acting immorally towards your wife, kids, and so on and so forth. So on all different levels, individuals and groups had to take accountability, and the Bible speaks to all that. Now, real quick, I'm just going to give you one more slide to demonstrate what I'm getting at here. Now, this is Amos chapter 2, verse 6 through 8. Okay, this is God is basically just kind of throwing out a bunch of judgments to a bunch of different people groups, and one of them being Israel. He says, verse 6, this is what the Lord says: for 3 sins of Israel, even for 4, I will not relent. They sell the innocent for silver, and the needy for a pair of sandals. They trample on the heads of the poor as on the dust of the ground, and deny justice to the oppressed. Father and son use the same girl and so profane my holy name. That's just nasty. They lie down beside every altar on garments taken in pledge. In the house of their God, they drink wine taken as fines. Okay. Now, let me ask you this question. Now, Israel is being judged. Now, is it the case that every single Israelite was involved in all these practices?
Of course not.
Seriously, it's seriously doubtful. That's obviously not the case. So, for example, father and son use the same girl and so profane my holy name. Well, that doesn't include the moms. Now, maybe the moms were, consenting to it or whatever, but they weren't the ones using them. But actually, that gets to my point. So there's a pervasive picture. There's this community-wide, nationwide, degree of sin going on, and God is judging the whole nation. Now, again, this gets to this idea of collective responsibility. Not everybody was involved in selling the innocent for silver. Not everybody was involved directly, in terms of the needy being sold for a pair of sandals. But to some extent, we're not, the picture of biblical accountability doesn't just stop at the individual. It has everything to do with the community, or you could say the societal level. Now, again, here in America, here in the Western world, we'll talk, well, I wasn't involved in that, or I didn't do that. So I'm not accountable. No. Don't let these preachers lie to you and say, and as if you don't have any sort of obligation to your fellow man over there. And if you're not directly involved, it has nothing to do with you. Oh, no. The Bible paints a picture of this dynamic, robust picture of responsibility that is from the individual on up. You know what I'm saying? So, to bring it home, here's what I'm trying to get at. Now, you'll often hear people talk about, oh, well, you got these black males out here. That's the problem. They're the ones that we got to be concerned about. Why don't you do something about them? All right, well, you might have some individuals out there, or well, you do have some individuals out there that are doing dirt. We all know that. You know what I'm saying? But then these same people say, oh, well, the problem is the black family. Okay, well, see, now you've moved one step beyond the individual. You talk about from individual to family. So now we got 2 levels of accountability, right? And then they'll go from, oh, it's not just the black family, it's culture, man. You got all these problems with the culture. Okay, so now we're 2 steps removed from the individual. So we got problematic individuals, problematic families, and problematic cultures, right? Now, what I'm doing is I'm saying that we can talk about accountability on all 3 of those levels. I'm saying that let's not be arbitrary and cut off the accountability there. Let's talk about racist systems. Let's talk about unjust systems beyond just racism. Let's talk about systems that aren't functioning in a way to bring about a biblical picture of well-being.
You're talking about equal accountability.
I'm saying accountability at all levels where the Bible prescribes accountability should be. And so it doesn't just cut off at some subgroup within a particular society. Okay, it doesn't just cut off there. It doesn't just say, okay, well, this particular subculture is a problem. No. I'm saying we got to talk about society. We got to talk about the nation, because the black culture, the black subgroup doesn't exist in a vacuum. I'm saying we're not just on some island somewhere. We're within the context of a broader society. I'm saying, so if you really want to be biblical about it, you can't just talk about, well, the black people over there. Okay, well, as long as there's a problem over there, then I ain't got to worry about it. Right. No. Let's be biblical about it, and let's deal with sin at all levels, including the national level. But that's where the hot potato comes. That's where they want to pass the hot potato back to the black community. No. Let's be real about it.
That reminds me of when Christ talks about, you want to take the speck out of your brother's eye, but there's this plank. There's this plank in yours.
You beat me to it. You beat me to it. That's a biblical principle. Exactly. That's a biblical principle. Now, here's the thing. We can't expect for sinners to rightly handle sin. Okay. That's like I said, I'm right now I'm talking about the church. I'm saying that we should not take on this Western individualism of the world and then read that in the scripture. No, what we need to do is read what the scripture has to say about the various different levels of moral accountability. And we shouldn't be trying to pass the buck back and forth about that speck and so on and so forth. No, let's take the beam out of our eyes and then help your brother take the speck out of his. That's what the Bible talks about, right? We need to bear one another's burdens. That's how that should be our disposition to those who are.
When the church first began, right, in Pentecost, all these people that came from these different parts of the world, they never went back home. So you got a homeless problem off the rip, and nobody was like, well, go back to Cyrene. You know what I mean? You got the gospel. Go back. You know what I mean? They didn't say that. It's like, well, everybody wants to stay here. They found the gospel here. Nobody wants to move, but nobody has a place to live. So everybody gave to who had need. Right.
That's
so
exactly
everybody had what they needed to survive. And if that didn't happen, the church wouldn't continue, because the church started with that issue.
Right.
That's the first issue. Right. So,
and now let me say this too. Let's not be, I want to make sure I kind of dot all my I's and cross all my T's. I'm saying when I refer to, that passage in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy, people say, well, you can't necessarily make prescriptions based upon the the law in Deuteronomy. Right. Let me just be clear that, you certainly can, given that there are instances where God is expressing his heart to a people group, or he's expressing something about what he believes about it, or basically God is expressing himself in his commands. I'll put it that way. You know what I'm saying? Right. And we can certainly glean from the principles that echo through his commands what it is that he would have people to do.
Right. It's a new covenant, but it's most instances. Right. New covenant, same principle.
Right. We're saying God is speaking justice to a people and say, this is how you are to carry out justice in reference to X, Y, and Z. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to kind of get there. And, lastly, Jesus talked about how when they came to him about divorce and was like, yo, what's up with this whole divorce thing? And Jesus was like, well, look, from the beginning, it wasn't so, and it's this principle. I would encourage people to, I don't know if I have it with me now, but Paul Coleman, I reference his work a lot, where he talks about this book, Is God a Moral Monster, where he deals with this part about how we can glean moral truths from the Garden of Eden and from, that last garden, or city rather, we deal with Revelation. What are things like in the world that God intended? And we can glean in terms of his ultimate nature and his ultimate will for mankind based upon those two dispensations.
Right.
And then
Paul says that in one of his letters. These things were written for us so that we could learn from that history, right?
Yeah,
So
all
we
scripture
can,
is profitable for
right.
correction, for rebuke, and for building up the man, people of God and so forth. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, do we see poverty in the garden? No.
No,
You know what I'm saying? Before the fall.
not at all.
We don't see that till after, with the effects of the thorns and thistles that came back about by God's curse. And do we see poverty in the end picture of Jesus' new kingdom? You know
There's
what I'm
no
saying?
hunger. There's no tears. No none of that.
Right. So that's the thing. So I mean, nobody's going to be walking on the streets and go, "Yo, can I get like $20, bro?" Nobody's going to be doing that. I'm saying,
Right.
we'll work for food. It's not going to be none of that. So that's why I said poverty is an effect of the fall. If you diagnose poverty through the lens of Western culture as an individual problem, or as a problem that's, is there something deficient about this person, rather than what the Bible has to say about it, in terms of being affected the fall, then you're going to come to radically different conclusions in terms of how we should treat poverty and the results thereof, i.e., crime. What I'm saying is we need to look through the lens of Scripture.
Yeah. But you're asking people to be thoughtful and to
Yeah,
think it through, and a lot of people just don't have that time or patience, because eventually, right, it falls on their lap eventually.
exactly. They don't want
You
that
know what I
hot
mean?
potato.
Right.
They don't want that hot potato. Yeah.
So with that being said, all right, in summary, why black on black crime is a myth. Fact: the overwhelming majority, 84% of white murder victims each year are killed by white assailants. Yet we don't say, but white on white crimes. Crimes directly link more to poverty than race or any other factor.
Oh, he was
And in
ready.
the U.S., poverty rate is twice as high amongst black Americans than white. And because of a history of institutional racism, black communities have higher poverty rates, poorly funded schools, are more likely to be targeted by the police.
I'm so glad you went there, bro, because I was debating on whether I was going to put some slides together. I was like, dang, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. But this part, what you're saying right here is essential, you know what I'm saying, to everything I was saying, because when you're dealing with poverty, and I'll just be real quick, because I know you want to say some other things, but black people didn't get to this place where we have like this 22% poverty rate, which you're right, is double the national average. You know what I'm saying? We didn't get to this place by ourselves. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand that. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be through direct racist legislation or through, indirectly through just government bungling, I'll call it, one way or the other, the black community didn't get here by ourselves. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at these things through a biblical lens, not just what Fox News gives you.
Absolutely. Systematic racism is real. Black people are more likely to live in poverty without the resources necessary to get out of it. White families, on the other hand, have 6 times as much wealth in comparison. According to Mapping Police Violence, black Americans were 3 times more likely to die from police than white Americans. Black Americans are 2.5 more likely to be shot and killed by police officers in comparison to white Americans. Black men make up just 6% of the nation's population, but 40% of that are killed by police officers, hence police brutality. So with that being said,
You got
if they
NWA
cared,
right there.
if they cared, they'd be asking about crime within the African American community year round,
That's right.
as many black activists and neighborhood leaders do. But as Doughboy told Trey in 1991's Boys in the Hood, either they don't know, don't show, or don't care about what's going on in the hood.
There you go. Hey, matter of fact, can I add something in? I was actually going to do a whole show on this, but I'm just throw it in here now. You know what I'm saying?
Ahead.
These same people, I would argue they don't care about cops either. They don't care about police officers either. All these people talking about Blue Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff, they don't care about police officers. I'm going to tell you why. Because if you really cared about police officers, then what you would do is you would address the social and systemic issues that foster crime, such that you can bring crime rates down and give less crime for these police officers to have to clean up. But you don't want to do that. What you would rather do is live your life and let police officers do your dirty, clean up your mess at the tail end of all these social and systemic issues. You know what I'm saying? You want them to clean up the crime at the tail end of that. If you really believe that Blue Lives Matter, then you should be just as active as I am about dealing with the kind of economic and social pressures that produce crime, so that you put these officers and less in harm's way.
It's a help me help you type of thing, right? So
Right. So don't talk to me about Blue Lives Matter if you're not trying to do anything about lessening the rate of crime that these officers have to deal with. You can't possibly believe that blue lives really matter if the only time you have to say something like that is basically you pat them on the back and then send them out there to deal with the crime that you don't want to do nothing about on your end.
Right.
Oh, okay. You don't really care. You don't care for it. That's what I'm saying. That's why I don't take these people serious, bro. That's why I don't take these people seriously, because at the end of the day, they really don't care about. They don't care about blue lives. They don't care about black and black crime. They just use these things as a counter argument, and they may
Listen,
care in the
the
moment.
scariest
It's
thing,
trendy to care. But
the
I want,
scariest
yeah.
thing you can do is walk somebody's claim to its most logical conclusion, because that spot can get real sketchy.
Right.
They want to stay at the beginning of the claim. So like, okay, that's interesting. Well, let's see what that claim happens when we walk it down. Oh, well, look what we find here.
Right. Right.
They don't want that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
You know what? That's why at the end of the day, you know how like in Scooby Doo, where it was at the end of the show, there was always the dude you take the mask off, whatever.
if it wasn't
You know
for
what I'm
these
saying?
meddling kids,
Right. But when people are lobbing these black on black crime arguments and all this and that, a lot of times when you take the mask off, it's just their own selfishness and moral laziness to deal with the real issue.
wow.
That's really what you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Now, I'm not going to say in every instance, because I don't know every single person that's making these arguments. You know what I'm saying? So I can't say everybody. But I do believe that it is a significant problem to such an extent that a lot of times when we tease these conversations out, I think it will come to the forefront.
I mean, you're talking about discipling now.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Talking about taking
Yes.
accountability as an individual, as a community, being humble enough to have someone correct you and show you your blind spots, and then being humble enough to accept that, and then being courageous enough to change those blind spots.
Yeah.
That's a lot of heavy lifting that a lot of people don't want to do.
I'm trying to tell you, man. I'm. You know what?
Y'all
I feel
those meddling kids. Guilty as charged, Beatrice. Guilty
right,
as
right.
charged.
I'm telling you, now this is I'm applying this to myself too. Like this is not just listen. Everything I say, I try to apply to myself as well. You know what I'm saying? So that's the reality of it. You know what I mean? But I'm telling you, I'm just warning cats, man. Don't let these preachers get out here and lie to you that the only thing you have to worry about is just your own sin. You don't have to care nothing about anybody else. Don't let them lie to you as if you don't have to get your hands dirty and exemplify justice within your context. I'm saying, don't let these politicians lie to you that the only thing that matters when it comes to economics and whatever is your own personal pulling up of your own bootstraps. And meanwhile, they're instituting tax codes and various policies that make it easy for certain groups within our system to advance while trickling down to others. You know what I'm saying, in terms of prosperity. Don't let these people lie to you and act as if that's okay. You better get in that Bible. You better understand that God has a very different picture of what sin looks like than what has been fed to you by our Western individualistic, speaker phones. You want to advance that? No. You better get in them scriptures. You know what I'm saying, and see what thus saith the Lord about it, and look in the mirror like I'm doing. I'm serious. I'm not just saying it. I'm dead serious. Like I'll give you a perfect example. I'm gonna get out the way. I'm going to give you something from my own personal experience that I'm grappling with right now. I was just talking to my wife about it the other night. Why is it that I don't wake up caring every day, or I don't wake up concerned about sex trafficking? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is it about me to where that doesn't break my heart the way that it should? I have to do some internal work about it. There's some things that I feel really strongly about. You know what I'm saying? But why is it is that something, even though I think it's heinous, it's terrible, why doesn't that tear me up? You know what I'm saying? That's something that, it's at the end of the day, we can't just care about things that impact us immediately. You know what I'm saying? Or impact us directly, I should say. I'm saying as a mark of discipleship, I think we should be growing in character to such an extent that our heart breaks for those that God's hearts break for. You know what I'm saying? God's heart breaks for. Right. And if that's not the case, then it's an indicator that there's something that needs to grow in us, man. I'm being real with you. I'm not, and I'm saying this just so it doesn't seem like I'm just preaching to other people. I'm dead serious. Oh, we got to wake up, man. We've been sold a bill of goods by Western society. That's not what the Bible teaches. I'm saying we need to have the same heart that God has, and if we don't, then I'm just gonna say, you don't want to stand before God like that. I don't.
And that's why the church is always known in Scripture as the body. Right? It's the body. It's never an organization. It's always an organism. right? It's
Yeah.
this one entity that oh, thank you, tell the truth, shame the
Shame
devil.
the devil. There you go.
Absolutely.
Right, right, right.
And it's always about the body. And the reason why the church exists today, 2,000 years later, is because there's been groups of individuals who stayed steadfast and stood in their square when it came to the gospel, regardless of what adversity befell them. That's the
Right.
only reason why there's a BK apologist and an Adam Coleman today, because
Yeah.
there's been groups.
That's
Now,
right.
there's been times where the church has definitely fell apart, but
Sure.
throughout those 2,000 years, there's always been groups of people who decided to be unified in the gospel and to live out what they've been taught. And we got to continue. If the church is going to be around for the next 2,000 years, or maybe Christ will come back prior to that, it's our turn now. The baton has been given to us. We have to be that group now,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
So that we can pass the baton to the next generation. But that won't happen unless we're unified and have a common cause, which is to uplift the cross of Christ. So
Amen. Wow, man, we're doing all right. You want to do some questions? That might be a first. You want to take some questions before you dip out, or what you want to do?
yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Let's take a couple. Let's take a couple questions.
I can't believe we actually made it through this early, bro.
Yeah.
Things are really changing. Robert,
Well, I
he
mean,
coming down.
I think we made a concered effort
Yeah, right.
since we was being mocked by the chat.
Right.
Right? Oh, it's gonna be 3 hours. Oh,
Yeah, right.
right. So
Like I was about to say, man, Robert E. Lee coming down. We under 2 hours. On the chat, man. Things are really changing here in America,
normal,
man.
bro.
It's a new, it's the new normal. You know what it was? I didn't have my sandwich today. That's what it was.
that's what it is.
I don't have the endurance, man.
You can't eat no more, man.
Right.
Or you gotta eat like an hour prior to the show, and then you be all right.
Yeah, be sure. Yeah.
So, but listen. So while we're waiting for some questions, what's coming down for you, sir? Well, actually, will we see you tomorrow in the bodega? Is that possible?
Wife willing, you know what I'm saying? So I haven't talked to her about it yet. I got to see, but possibly we'll see what's going on. What y'all got going on tomorrow? Like, is there a topic already, or?
That's a bunch of topics,
Well, yeah.
Now,
right.
but
I did. Oh, okay. I didn't know. Yeah. I got you. Okay, cool.
We want to talk. We'll talk a little bit about Satanism in South Africa. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want it. I don't want you to give me Satanism from South Africa. I mean, I don't want you
I'm not
to give me
giving
that.
to you. I'm saying that's the topic.
It's like it's COVID-19. You're gonna call for me. I'm gonna get.
Recommended resources on criminology.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Actually, well, what I would do is I'm going to give you some in the description. Rather, I'm going to put like a number of different articles, and each one of them, I try to stick to works that have been highly cited, if you will. You know what I'm saying, so each of those you can look in the bibliography, and it's going to give you other sources, and it's like going to really show you kind of the mainstream of the areas that I hit on. So I would say start with those, and then go for that. Yeah.
I feel robbed. Y'all owe me some slides or something. You funny. You can't win for losing, right? It's too long, and now it's too short.
I know.
It's
like they wanted that 2.5 mark, man. They wanted 2.5 hours, man.
Yeah, I mean,
but I really am serious, man. This would be ticking me off, man. With like just cats bringing up black and black crime that really don't have any skin in the game. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like it's just so that's just corny, man. Like people really need to stop doing that,
especially if we decide, oh, so you want to discuss that? Let's walk that claim down.
Right.
Let's walk it down the block and see what we come up with. Like they don't want that.
They don't want that. They don't want that.
They think it's a one-hitter quitter. It's like I say this, it's a drop the mic moment, and that's the end of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
That's right.
Yeah, actually, yes. Black Parade show schedule should be a good one. Yeah, so me and Nefertiti this Sunday we'll be discussing Beyonce's new record, The Black Parade, which I call Syncretism on Parade. And we're going to look at the lyrics, and we're going to see, what is she advocating for, And she's been advocating for these things for some time, but it's really crystallizing in this particular song. And just having, Nefi, who comes from that realm of the Yoruba and the conscious community. I mean, who better to have this conversation than somebody who's already dealing with that? So we're going to break it down, and the Bay Hive is going to come and destroy me and strike my channel. But, it is what it is. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So,
That's
so what
right.
else is
That's
going
right.
on with you, sir?
Oh, I see we got some questions in the chat, but
Oh, we
or
do?
a question, yeah, from Carmel Crump.
All right. Why are we called Marxists for caring about social justice? I mean,
Yeah.
outside of it, of again, it's red herring, right? It's a quick way to stop you from having this argument. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
now we're going to talk about whether or not you're a Marxist, as opposed to whether or not there is such a thing as institutional racism.
Yeah. You know what? Here's another thing too. Let me say this. I'm gonna say a couple quick things to that. So number one, I came across this interesting interview. I can't remember if I mentioned this last time or not, but I came across this interesting interview with Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer was a civil rights leader who spent a lot of time dealing with voter registration and voter rights. You know what I'm saying? She was from a rural area, Mississippi, and so forth. Very very powerful woman, Christian. You know what I'm saying? Black Christian as well. So she was doing this interview with some, I don't know, it was the BBC or whatever, some British, interviewer, and uh, Fannie Lou Hamer and her group, they had started, I guess, like a spinoff of the Democratic Party. I think it was called the Freedom Democrats, I believe. And he asked her, "Are you a communist?" She said something very interesting. She said, "I don't know anything about communism or communists, but I do know that every time we start standing up for rights, justice, and our fair share, people start calling us communists. So if communism is about rights, justice, and getting your fair share, then yeah, I guess I'd have to be a communist.
I'll be that.
I'll be that, right? And then she says, she says that, and she comes back in. She says, but really, I don't know anything about communists. I just know that when we talk about these things, that people keep calling us communists. Now, obviously, she wasn't a communist, but I just thought it was interesting that same strategy of labeling people something that's reprehensible just because you don't like what it is that they're saying, that's been a common refrain since from Jump Street, right. But at least here in America, I think it probably has been. Now, with that being said, I do think that Marxism, at least among other things, I mean, it's a robust ideology, but among other things, it has to do with undermining certain power structures and redistributing power and wealth in a particular system. And so, what happens is any robust critique of racism in America is at some point, in order to critique the moral issue of America, you're going to have to intersect with the way that racism has influenced and impacted America's systems and economics and economic distribution and power distribution. So when if you're going to make a robust moral critique, inevitably you're going to end up dealing with with economics and power. And it's when you get to that point that, in the mind of the objectors, that you're talking about Marxism then, because you're talking about removing or redistributing wealth and power. It's like, no, we're just saying that from its outset, America's power distribution and economic distribution has been tied to racism. And if you're going to undo those kind of things, then we can't take it for granted that everything has always been fair and everything has progressed economically in terms of power distribution in a way that's equitable.
Especially when you make the claim that, well, the driving principles behind what we do as a nation is the Bible.
It's supposed to be.
Right?
Yeah.
So no, we're not talking Marxism. We're talking repentance. That's what we're talking.
Right. Exactly. It's about repentance. And I'm just throw a little nugget in here. I would encourage people to research the founding documents, things like the Federalist Papers, some of the works of John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, and so forth. And the reason why is because what you'll see, America is born out of this context of opposing England, the tyrannical governmental power of England. Right. And so the founders are very concerned about checking government power. That's why we have three, branches of government, so on and so forth, because they're trying to check checks and balances of governmental power. Now, with any nation, there are different forms of power. There's governmental power, but then there's also economic power. One thing you didn't see among the founders was this equal concern about the power as far as how economics was welded. I'm saying, or the distribution of power in terms of economics. And so you don't have this equal concern and thus equal check of that kind of power. And I would argue that that's why here in America, in this laissez-faire economy, supposedly, there is a tendency toward economic power being misused because people aren't really looking at that. They're focused on curtailing government power. So I'm just throwing it up there.
Cool. Okay, this will be the last one. Can y'all speak on evangelism and the Black church? The difference between the two as it relates to separation, divide in the biblical Christian church, and social justice from black leaders. Wow,
I might have to
that's a
read that again. Yeah,
that's a show unto itself.
yeah.
Can you speak on evangelism and the black church, the difference
Okay.
between the two as it relates to separation, divide in the biblical Christian church, and social justice from black leaders?
Okay.
Yeah, that's heavy.
I'm not exactly sure. I guess maybe is the question of like what's the relation between social justice
The
and
difference.
evangelism or the difference? Well, I mean, if anything, well, let me put it this way. I think an appropriate use of the term social justice, if we're coming from a biblical starting point, would be to speak to this notion that justice in general is something that is lived out in public. You know what I'm saying? As I think as Martin Luther King said, that justice is what love looks like in public. So justice is inherently a social matter. You know, it's something that occurs among, or the context of justice is people, is amongst people. So I think if we're gonna by social justice, that's what it's just. Yeah, it's just really just justice. You know what I'm saying. So anyway, I think the relationship between that and evangelism is that really in general, our efforts towards social justice ought to be for the point of fulfilling what Jesus said, like basically doing good works before men that they may, praise your Father in heaven. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And the fact that it's we're living out that biblical mandate, this package in the Imago Dei, the image of God, that we're being good stewards over the earth that we're supposed to be stewarding and in a way that reflects God's nature and his
Right.
will for mankind. So that's where I think the pursuit of justice fits in the life of the believer. And that's going to be an evangelistic, or there's an evangelistic element to it, because when you exemplify what justice looks like, what God's character looks like, what love looks like, what compassion looks like, then I think particularly in the African American context, that draws people to Christ, because there's this intersection between the problem of evil and
Right.
suffering and racism, oppression, and so forth. And if you can demonstrate how the biblical worldview is an answer to that, not only through word but through deed, then I think that it ultimately it should be a signpost pointing people toward the gospel, towards Jesus.
I think there's an issue when it comes to putting the cart before the horse. And what I mean by that is, for some people, I think it's, well, we have these social justice issues, therefore let's implement the Bible to affect social justice. Where actually what we need to be doing is implementing the Bible first, right? Being imitators of Christ, and the side effect of that is social justice, right?
Yeah,
So we gotta find God and imitate God first, and then in the
first.
process of doing that, social justice is also handled, but it's not the other way around. You know what I mean?
And you know what? So you and actually Carmel Crunk said something similar in the chat. She said, we're letting the world lead. And before that, she said that the church should be leading the social justice movement. She said, we're letting the world lead it. You know what? This is something I've really been thinking about, and I want to be short with it because I'm still kind of working my way through it. I think 90% of these conversations that most of us have on race, injustice, and all that kind of stuff is all wrong, in the sense that we're most of the time, I feel like we're letting, maybe 90% is too high. I'll just say a large amount of the time, we're letting people in the world frame these issues, then give them to us, and we're trying to chew on it and make sense of it from a biblical standpoint, rather than starting with scripture and then bringing that to the table as we interpret and frame the issues in terms of what's going on in society. And then, get in the public square to do something about it. Like, we
Right.
got it all backwards, man. We're letting the economists like Thomas Sowell frame these issues. We're letting, people like, I'm just throwing him out there. Just he's the person that comes to mind. I was talking about him earlier. But, we're letting economists and all these different kinds of scholars in different areas frame these issues and tell us what's really going on, rather than saying, no, we're going to start with, what does the Bible say about well-being? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? What does that have to do with the obligation that I have toward others? What does it mean to govern well? What does that look like? And then taking that lens and applying it to the areas of economics, sociology, and so
Denying
forth.
yourself, carrying your cross daily,
Right.
lordship. Is Jesus really Lord of your life? What does that
Is it?
look like on a
Right.
daily basis? Right? Yeah.
Right.
Beatrice asks, was America ever founded on biblical Christianity? No. Next question.
Right. Well, no, I mean, no, that's a great question. I mean, no, because I mean, in short, we say biblical Christianity would have to be the entirety of Christianity. And so the answer is obviously no. You know what I'm saying? Because when you think about it, if you're saying on one hand all men are created equal, and at the same time you're
Blacks are
enslaving people,
4/5 of a man.
come on, man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
There's a
then,
there's a glitch in your theology.
yeah, you can't
Serious
be
glitch.
you can't be following the whole counsel of God. And that's another thing. People like to quote Thomas Jefferson. I would say there's pretty good reason to think that when he penned those words, all men are created equal, or whatever, created equal. I'm pretty sure he probably wasn't talking about Africans, because in his personal life, he wasn't persuaded that that was the case. So I can't imagine that that's really what he meant. Now, fortunately for us, that principle was in the founding of America, such that later on we can, kind of rework it, what I'm saying, and bring it up to the level that of what reality and more specifically the Bible suggests. But so we're fortunate in that regard. But no, in its entirety, no, I would say no.
Have either of you familiar with Dr. Glenn Bracey? I am not. You?
I know the name, but not the work. I mean, I feel like I've seen that. Like, somebody else asked me that fairly recently, and I can't remember who that was. But I could be wrong. But I know the name, but not the work. You know what I'm saying?
Cool. So listen, we're gonna actually stop it now so that we can actually be under 2 hours.
Right.
So we can really stick it to the haters in the chat.
Yeah.
Say that we couldn't do it.
Right. Right.
But now we know the party people's just playing with us. It's all good.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I feel like this is good. There's very robust explanation from Mr. Coleman, as always.
Thank you, man.
And this is great. And we need to train people to think
Right.
critically, to be thoughtful, to walk out their claims, because people say things without really thinking it through.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't have a problem with people bringing up black on black crime, because it's not something that we ought to be concerned about. I have a problem with people bringing up black on black crime in the way that they do, because they're making bad arguments. Right? It's like we take the feature of who you are, rather than make that the foundation of who you are. You get into idolatry. There you go. D knew I said it. So, but but seriously, I mean, it's like, I just, a bad argument is a bad argument, no matter who it's from, who it's against, or what, or whatever. And so when people bring up this black on black crime stuff, they're 99.999% of the time, they're not serious, and they're making bad arguments. And so we should reject bad arguments.
This is the last question of the night.
And Nate D2 is crazy.
Well, she is good at what she does. You have to
yeah.
give the woman credit.
Right. Right.
When I do a video, I don't have 54 million people, watching my thing. You know
Sure.
what I mean? She's doing something.
Sure.
So,
Now,
hey.
to her credit, I think she probably is a hard worker. She's probably one of those high motor individuals. She expresses herself well. She's very quick witted. You know what I'm saying? I think that's one thing that's to her credit. And I'm saying this because I feel like, people think we're like bashing Candace Owens lately or something like that. But
Right.
I don't have a problem with her personally. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I pray that she comes to know Christ in a very real way. You know what I'm saying? Such that it's reflected in her life and words and actions. But with that being said, I mean, it's just, she makes bad arguments. I think that she's somebody who probably is very talented and is in a way a slave to her own notoriety, and that she kind of blew up and didn't have enough time to really dig deeper roots in terms of the things that she comments on.
Right. And to think it through.
And so she gets up making statements parroting somebody else and just ends up looking silly.
Absolutely. And with that being said, it's Adam Coleman, Mr. True ID. It's the BK Apologist. We'll catch you on the flip side. Bodega tomorrow night. Peace.